Some betrayals don't arrive screaming. They arrive on a Tuesday morning, over coffee, in a silk robe, with rehearsed words and a carefully chosen smile. My wife looked me in the eye, the woman I had built a life with, saved $44,000 with, cried with in a fertility clinic, and she asked me for one night to sleep with another man. She called it honesty. She called it a gift to our future. I called it the beginning of the end. Hers. Not mine. Stay with me. Because what happened next, what I found, what I uncovered, and what I did about it, is a story about more than a broken marriage. It's a story about what a man does when the foundation he thought he was standing on turns out to be built on sand. My name is Grant Branson. I'm 41 years old. I live, or I lived, in a two-story townhouse in Midtown Atlanta. For 6 years, I was married to Mila Branson. She was a PR director at a mid-size agency called Vantage Communications. Polished. Persuasive. Always dressed like she was about to be photographed. I used to think that was ambition. I understand now it was performance. We had been talking about children for nearly a year. Not casually, seriously. We'd visited a fertility specialist twice. We had a joint savings account earmarked for IVF if it came to that. We called it our foundation account. $44,000, built carefully over 3 years of discipline and hope. Mila had chosen the name herself. I should have asked more questions. The morning she made her request was a Tuesday in early March. I remember the light, pale and flat, the kind Atlanta gets in late winter when the sky can't quite decide what season it wants to be. I was at the kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing a risk assessment for a client in Charlotte. Mila came downstairs in a silk robe, the one she knew I liked, poured herself coffee, and sat across from me like she had something rehearsed. She did. "Grant," she said, setting down her mug with a careful click. "I need to talk to you about something. And I need you to hear me out before you react." I closed the laptop. When someone opens with that sentence, you close the laptop. "I've been thinking," she continued, her voice steady, almost professional, "about us. About what we're stepping into. Having kids. The whole next chapter." A pause. "There's something I need before we get there. One night. Just one. I want the freedom to be with someone else, fully, before we close that door for good." She kept talking. Something about honesty. About fairness. About not wanting to spend the rest of her life wondering. But I'd already heard everything I needed to. The woman across from me had spent months planning how to pitch this. She'd chosen a Tuesday morning when I'd be calm. She'd worn the robe she knew I liked. She'd framed it as a gift, to the marriage, to our future children. Every word had been chosen. Every pause had been practiced. I smiled. Not because I agreed. Because I finally understood what I was dealing with. "Okay," I said. She blinked. "Okay. Sure. One night. But not from here." I stood up, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out the larger of our 2 rolling suitcases. She followed me to the bedroom doorway, watching as I opened her side of the closet and began folding clothes into the bag, efficiently, without anger, the same way I pack for a business trip. "Grant, what are you doing?" "Helping you get started. You want freedom? You won't find it in this house." I didn't say I was leaving. "I know," I said. I did. I zipped the bag, set it upright, picked up my keys. The drive to her mother's house in Buckhead took 18 minutes. Mila sat in the passenger seat without speaking. When I pulled into the driveway, she finally said, "This isn't what I meant." "I know exactly what you meant," I told her. "That's the problem." I waited until she stepped out. Then I drove home. Back in the kitchen, I reopened my laptop. The Charlotte assessment was still on the screen. I finished it in 40 minutes, sent it before noon, and billed it at my standard rate. Some things you can still control. You start with those. But even as I typed, something was already shifting beneath the surface. Quiet, methodical, unstoppable. I didn't know it yet, but the next morning, I would open our bank accounts and find a number that would change everything. $44,000 had become $27,000. $16,600. Gone. And the story of where it went? That's where this gets interesting. There's a particular kind of silence that follows the moment you realize you've been lied to. Not once, not impulsively, but carefully, over months, by someone who looked you in the eye every morning over coffee. That was the silence I sat in the morning after I dropped Mila at her mother's house. I made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table. And I opened our joint financial accounts. Not out of anger. Out of habit. When something breaks in a structure, you start with the foundation. The money. The foundation account, our IVF savings, $44,000 built over 3 years, read $27,400. $16,600 was gone. Not in one transfer. In a series of withdrawals, spread over 4 months. Each one between $2,000 and $4,000. Each one made on a Friday afternoon when I was traveling for client work. Whoever had done it knew my schedule. Of course she did. I didn't call Mila. I didn't text. I opened a new document and started building a timeline. Dates, amounts, corresponding events. It's what I do for a living. Map the pattern before you name the problem. By noon, I had enough to call Sabrina Holt. Sabrina had been my attorney on a corporate dispute 2 years earlier. Sharp. Methodical. Allergic to drama. She picked up on the second ring. Grant. Her voice was neutral. I was wondering when you'd call. I retained her before I left the building. The name. At Sabrina's office, I laid out everything. The withdrawals. The timeline. What Mila had said at the kitchen table. Sabrina listened without interrupting, one of the things I respect most about her. When I finished, she put down her pen. The withdrawals are clean enough to be disputed. Joint account. Her name on it. She'll claim household management. A pause. We need to know where it went. Do you have any idea who she's been spending time with? I told her about Dorian Ashby. The name had surfaced 2 weeks earlier. Mila had mentioned him casually, the way you mention something you've already rehearsed. A gallery owner. Very interesting. She'd been consulting for his PR launch. I hadn't thought twice about it at the time. Sabrina looked at the name on my phone screen. Dorian Ashby. I know that name. He opened a gallery in Buckhead about 8 months ago. High-end. The kind of place that sells more atmosphere than art. She hired a private investigator named Curtis Bowman before the meeting ended. What Curtis found. 3 days later, Curtis called. Dorian Ashby's gallery received 2 private investment contributions in the last 4 months. Neither is publicly listed. The amounts match the withdrawals from your joint account, within margins that suggest a pass-through. He paused. Your wife has been seen at the gallery on at least 6 separate occasions outside business hours. The last visit was the night before she had that conversation with you. I wrote the numbers down. They fit. But there was more. The money hadn't gone directly to Ashby. It had been routed through a consulting LLC, registered to a woman named Petrovon. No verifiable clients. A mail drop address in Midtown. And Petrovon was listed as Dorian Ashby's emergency contact on his commercial lease. A shell company. My wife's money, routed through a ghost entity, tied to her lover's business. I had seen this structure before, in corporate fraud cases. Never in my own kitchen. The blister pack. Then I found something I wasn't looking for. In the back of the filing cabinet, behind a row of tax folders, a small pharmacy bag, stapled shut. Inside, an empty blister pack. Daily oral contraceptives. Receipt dated 14 months ago. 14 months ago, we had been 6 months into active fertility discussions. We'd already had our first clinic consultation. We had started the foundation account. Mila had cried at that appointment when the doctor talked about timelines. And she had been taking birth control the entire time. I sat on the floor of the home office with that blister pack in my hand for a long time. I didn't feel rage. I felt the specific, hollow clarity of a man who has just found the last piece of a puzzle, and realizes the picture was never what he thought it was. The solo appointment. The next morning, Sabrina called with something new. A contact at the fertility clinic had flagged something discreetly. Mila had come in for a solo appointment 11 months ago, a personal egg freezing consultation, filed under her insurance, not our joint policy. She was building an exit strategy while we were building a family. The phone call. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Branson. The voice was male. Measured. Slightly too smooth. My name is Dorian Ashby. I think it would be in both our interests to speak privately. I said nothing. Let the silence stretch. I understand things are complicated right now, he continued. I want you to know I have nothing but respect for what you've built. I think there's a way to resolve this quietly, for everyone's benefit. Another pause. I'm prepared to make a financial gesture. Something meaningful. If we can agree to keep this between us. I looked at my desk. At the folder with Rafe Quinlan's documents. At the Ziploc bag with the contraceptive blister pack inside. I'm going to need you to say that again, I said calmly. More clearly this time. He did. $200,000. For my silence. For walking away. I ended the call. Pulled up Georgia's single-party consent recording law. Confirmed I was well within my rights. And sent the audio file to Sabrina within the hour. Her text came back in 4 words. This just changed everything. There is a moment in every difficult story where the man who has been quietly building his case finally gets to open the folder. That moment came on a Thursday morning, in a walnut-paneled conference room 11 floors above Peachtree Street. On one side of the table, Mila and her attorney, Krebs, a compact woman in her 50s who telegraphed aggression through careful politeness. On the other side, me and Sabrina Holt, who had never once in her career confused composure with weakness. The meeting. Krebs opened with the expected framing. Mutual separation. No fault attributed. Reasonable division of jointly held assets. Temporary spousal support while Mila established independent housing. A standard opening position. Built for a man who felt guilty. I didn't feel guilty. Sabrina waited until Krebs finished. Then she opened her own folder with the same unhurried patience she brought to everything. She walked through the withdrawal timeline. The Petrovon LLC. The indirect connection to Ashby's gallery funding. The fertility clinic's record of Mila's solo egg freezing consultation. The contraceptive blister pack, dated 14 months ago. She placed each item on the table like she was dealing cards. Measured. Precise. Unhurried. Krebs's expression didn't break, but her posture changed. Small adjustments. The kind you make when the ground shifts under you. Mila looked up at me for the first time. You've been building this for weeks, she said quietly. I've been building it since the morning you asked me for permission to be with another man, I said. You just didn't notice because you weren't watching. Grant. I'm not angry, Mila. I kept my voice even. I'm just done pretending the last 4 months didn't happen. The money is documented. The clinic visit is documented. I paused. The phone call is documented. All of it. Krebs leaned toward Mila and said something low. Mila shook her head slightly. Then Krebs straightened. We'd like to recess and reconvene. Take all the time you need, Sabrina said pleasantly. The interview. 3 weeks later, Mila gave a media interview. A lifestyle site. A piece titled Finding Herself After the Fall. She described a marriage to a man who was brilliant at reading risk in business, but completely blind to the human cost of his own emotional distance. She talked about feeling invisible. Undervalued. Like a supporting character in someone else's story. She said she had asked for something honest, and been punished for it. 240 comments. Most of them sympathetic. I read the piece twice. Then I closed the tab and called Sabrina. Don't respond publicly, she said before I could speak. Don't post anything. Don't send a correction. I wasn't going to. I know. I'm saying it anyway. A pause. Forbes reached out to my office last week. They're doing a regional feature on risk management firms that have expanded during economic uncertainty. Your firm qualifies. Do the interview. I don't do press. You do now. Not to attack her. Not to respond. Just to exist on the record as yourself. Let the contrast speak without you saying a word. I thought about it for a day. Then I called the Forbes contact. The interview happened in my office on a Thursday afternoon. The journalist, Claire Weston, was sharp and prepared. Halfway through, she asked carefully about the past year, personally. I told her it had been clarifying. She seemed to understand that was the whole answer. The rebuild. The legal process concluded 6 weeks later. The financial misconduct filing, combined with the recording of Dorian Ashby's bribery attempt, shifted every negotiation point. The foundation account funds were categorized as marital assets subject to full recovery. The storage unit Sabrina subpoenaed contained items that had been removed from the home without disclosure, including documents that settled a key disputed asset question entirely in my favor. Dorian Ashby did not escape cleanly. Rafe Quinlan's fraud complaint, combined with the new documentation from our case, was finally taken seriously. By the time the dust settled, Ashby's gallery was under financial review, his LLC facing civil exposure, and his carefully built Atlanta reputation was quietly, efficiently unraveling. He had underestimated the kind of man he was dealing with. That was his mistake. What I learned. I still live in Midtown. Same building. I run 6 miles through Piedmont Park every morning. I still work in risk. The Forbes piece ran, 3 pages, my firm's name in the headline, not hers. Wade Langley still collects his mail in the lobby. We nod. Sometimes we talk. He never says I told you so. That's how you know a man has real character. Shane Pruitt's group still meets on Saturday mornings. I go when I can. I stopped being a visitor and started being someone who shows up. That matters more than I expected. And the foundation account? I kept it open. Changed the name. I'm not sure what I'm building toward yet. But I'm building. Life lesson. Closing. Here is what I want to leave you with, because this story isn't just about a marriage that failed. It's about something deeper. The most dangerous lies are the ones wrapped in the language of love. When someone uses the words honesty and freedom to hand you a betrayal, pay attention. Not to what they're saying, but to what they've already done by the time they say it. Mila didn't ask for one night on a Tuesday morning in March. She had already been living that other life for months. The conversation at the kitchen table wasn't a request. It was a closing argument, delivered to a man she assumed would either capitulate or crumble. She did not know which kind of man she had married. Now she does. And here is the other thing, the thing that matters most. Grief and clarity can exist in the same room. You don't have to choose between feeling the loss and building the response. The best thing I did in the worst weeks of my life was refuse to let pain become paralysis. I made coffee. I opened the accounts. I called the attorney. I finished the client work. I went for the run. I showed up to the group on Saturday. Control what you can control. Everything else is just noise, until you're ready to answer it. Subscribe, call to action. If this story stayed with you, if some part of Grant's journey felt familiar, or taught you something about trust, resilience, or what it means to rebuild from nothing, then I want you to be here for the next one. This channel exists for stories like this. Real. Raw. Human. The kind of story that doesn't get told in the highlight reel, only in the quiet, honest moments when the truth finally surfaces. Subscribe so you never miss one. Drop a comment below. Tell me, what was the moment in this story that hit you hardest? I read every single one. And if you know someone who needs to hear this right now, someone going through something quiet and heavy that they haven't told many people about, share this with them. Because sometimes the most powerful thing one person can do for another is simply say, "You are not alone." And someone else already found their way through. Until next time, keep building.